I love that transition thing you do. That is really cool. Yeah. All right, so I'm Sandy Richter, and I am so glad to be with you. Thank you. What an honor it has been to spend the weekend with your women and your menfolk last night. We let them come to one of the services. It has been such a joy. I've had a long-running relationship with Woodlands, and I just think you guys are so wicked awesome. So, yeah, give yourselves a hand. You are awesome. I am honored to be here. I'm honored to have a chance to have Mark and Susan's pulpit. This is a very big deal if you're a pastor to let somebody else stand here. And I can't believe that I get to launch Holy Week with you. So, yeah, know that I am feeling the weight of the honor, and I am truly just loving getting to know your people. So, what day is today? Yeah, Palm Sunday. This is the day it all begins. This is the day that our high holidays as the people of God begins. Now, our culture tends to be really interested in Christmas and not so much in Easter, but not us. This is the week. This is when it all begins. This is the day of all days. These are our high holy days. Amen. And the reason for this is because 2,000 years ago, a backwoods preacher from Galilee, from a no-name town without any formal training, a miracle worker from a one-stoplight town north of nowhere, an upstart disruptor who the religious elite intended to squash as soon as they could get their hands on him, rode into Jerusalem, and the crowds went wild. He had 12 guys with him. Yeah, 12 backwoods guys who for one brief shining moment were absolute rock stars. Yeah, he came riding into the city of Jerusalem on the wings of Genesis 49 until Shiloh comes, on the wind of Zechariah 9, behold Zion, your king comes to you, humble and riding on a donkey. And he set the city on fire. He set the city on fire. We know this day as Palm Sunday. He would have known it as the entrance into his high holidays. This was Jesus' last week on earth, and it will be marked by the triumphal entry by Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Resurrection Sunday. But the people who were with him, well, they're not so sure what this Holy Week is going to entail. My job this morning is to remind you of what these high holidays are and to reignite your hearts the way he reignited their hearts on that Palm Sunday appearance of the Christ. So are you ready? Yeah, so let's do this. All right, for those of you who have been raised in the church, you have walked through these high holidays 100 times. You have listened to the Communion Liturgy, which will be recited on Maundy Thursday so many times that you could recite it to me. And sometimes we get a little bit lost in our Biblish, for those of you who are epic fans. Biblish is Bible speak, stuff that comes out of our church slang that's in the Bible. It's in English, but we've said it so many times it's become gibberish. That's what Biblish is. You can use it. My job is to take that Biblish and move it down into living active speech. And the way we do that is we remember who our people are. We bring them back into real space and time. So before I'm done with you this morning, my goal is that you will feel the weight of this week. You will feel the weight of the weighty words that are recited on Maundy Thursday that become our communion ritual, which are the ratification of the new covenant. I want you to feel that last week in Jerusalem. I want you to feel the sweat of a hot spring day, the press of the crowds, the unspoken tension of a brewing rebellion. I want you to hear the voice of the gospel writers again. So on that Palm Sunday, the children of Abraham, you are heirs of Abraham according to Galatians 4, had been stripped of their independence. They had been stripped of their dignity by the iron hand of the Roman Empire. They were exiled, they were impoverished, they were silenced, and they were cynical. But they gathered at the Golden Gate, and when they saw this man that we call Jesus riding in on a donkey, they went ballistic. They are waving their palms. They're throwing their clothes over the mud puddles of a spring a dirt road. I've gotten really excited in my life, but I don't think I have ever taken off my clothes and started throwing them on the ground. This crowd is going wild, and you know what they're yelling? They are yelling Hosanna, as we just sang, which is actually Hoshiana. They are yelling, save us, O Son of David. Save us, O Son of David. They are naming this man Messiah, and he is letting them. And can I tell you that in that political climate, for them to call this man Son of David, for them to name him Messiah, is for the crowds of Jerusalem to sign his death warrant. He knows it. They don't know it quite yet. And so it all begins. We pick up the story on that Sunday. Having spent the bulk of his ministry up north in the Galilee, Jesus knows it is time to come south. Why has he spent his time up in the northland of Galilee? Because he's been keeping away from the seat of Jewish power in Jerusalem. Because he knows that in coming to Jerusalem, he is making himself vulnerable to arrest and to seizure. He knows that he has already been identified as a problem, and the powers that be have every intention of solving that problem. This is the week before the great Passover celebration. It's the spring, the high holidays. It will include the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first fruits, and the climax, the Passover. So the city itself is already packed out before Jesus even arrives. Every person imaginable has come to be in the city for the festival. Every available space is full. You have got Uncle Shlomo and Aunt Rachel. They've pitched a tent in the backyard with their 4 kids. Cousin Yosef and his family there in the extra guest room. Grandma and Grandpa, they've got an RV parked in the driveway, okay? The YMCA, the motels, the hotels, they are full. There is not one space left in the city. There are merchants everywhere, right? They're selling foam fingers, you know? Passover coming up now. They're selling snacks and things with Jerusalem stamps on it. Folks are rushing around getting ready for the holiday. And to add to the chaos, according to Josephus, the great historian, there are 250,000 lambs in the city of Jerusalem at this hour. Every one of them a 4 or 5 month old, recently weaned, unblemished lamb getting ready for the festival. Can you smell it in your little suburban suburb? You need to think about the shuk in Jerusalem, if you've been to Jerusalem yet, during the height of tourist season. You need to think about Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July, or maybe Disneyland during spring break, you know, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when all those perfect, happy American families are at each other's throats and the kids are screaming, and who cares that Princess whoever is wandering by? You know that moment. So tight, so packed out that if you turn down the wrong road, well, that's where you're going, because that's where the crowd's going. So packed in that you can smell the guy next to you and you really wish you couldn't. This is Jerusalem during the week when Jesus rides into the city. And his guys, oh, they're rock stars. Think about it. These are boys from the outback of Lubbock, okay? Get that in your mind. Their dads are cattle ranchers. They've only been to Houston twice, okay? And they're walking in behind the man, and they are loving every minute of it. Okay, so Jesus comes into the city, the crowd goes wild, and he spends that week ministering to the crowds. All of these crowds who are gathered from everywhere, and they're on holiday. So they have all the time in the world to sit and listen to this cool new upstart from Galilee. Everywhere that guy goes, it's like a complete fangirl frenzy. It is that moment when Justin Bieber arrives at your high school, okay? Everywhere he goes, he can heal the lame. He can give sight to the blind. His preaching is mesmerizing. And perhaps best of all, this backwoods preacher is perfectly comfortable sitting in the temple square taking on the Sanhedrin. Yeah. He'll engage the Pharisees. He'll talk to the Sadducees. And you know what? He wins every time. It's like that moment on social media where you got some guy who thinks he's all that and more, and he just will not get off your page. Do you know this guy? You know, you met him maybe once, or he's the friend of a friend, or worse, he's a relative, so you really can't close him out. He's arguing for a flat earth, for Corona being a Russian espionage plot, or worse, that KFC is actually better than Chick-fil-A. That guy. And then out of the wings comes some guy you forgot you were even friends with, who has degrees from not only Stanford, but MIT as well. He works for NASA. He really is a rocket scientist. That guy. And he totally shuts KFC man down. Isn't that a great moment? Okay, you know you love it. Yeah, you do. Okay, so this is what Jesus is doing, thank you very much, in the Holy Land. Yes, he is. So I suspect that the regular folk of Jerusalem who have gathered for this holiday, as Jesus is taking on the tithing laws with the Pharisees, when he's calling them out for straining at a gnat and swallowing a camel, when he's totally kicking their butts for devouring the widows' houses while offering their elegant prayers in their academic regalia, they're kind of loving this. Yeah, they are. And our guy is setting up shop right downtown. Oh, is he irritating the powers that be? His encyclopedic knowledge of the scriptures, his obvious authority and anointing, his pointed criticisms. The point being, folks, that the temperature in the city is rising. It's rising. It's rising. We can feel the riot brewing. We can feel the motions behind the scenes, the boiler room politics that have already started to turn. Jesus knows. And he knows the religious leaders have already decided that he is a problem and he must be dealt with. He knows that Judas is already being courted and intends to betray him. He knows that his time is limited. So this brings us to Thursday. So Thursday morning is the day that we know as the beginning of Maundy Thursday, and most of us don't even pay attention. But at this point, we are looking at Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 20, because this will be Passover Eve. And it says, now on the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover? And he said, go into the city to a certain man and say to him, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I'm to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. I'm always intrigued by that. Jesus just sends a guy and says, we'd like your animal and your house. And they say, sure, yeah, okay. The teacher says, my time is at hand. I am to keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. So the disciples did as Jesus directed them, and they prepared the Passover. So the first thing we need to know about our Holy Week and about our communion meal that is going to be the crown of our Holy Week is that it was given to us during the Passover meal. And this, of course, is fully intentional. So what do we know about the Passover meal? Well, you need to know that this is the high holiday of the Jewish calendar. This is the Christmas Eve of Judaism. You know that special sacred night when you pull the shades, you shut the door, and it's just you and your clan. This is a special, sacred, magical night in which every patriarch of every clan gathers his children and his children's children around a family table and presides over a ritual meal that has been celebrated for 1,000 years, in which the mighty acts of God are recounted to each and every Jew in and out of Palestine. And the question that is asked at each and every juncture of this meal, by every symbol, by every dish that's on the table, by every liturgical word, is this question: do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember the greatest single act of God's redemption of his people? Do you remember the Exodus? That terrifying night when the blood of a spotless lamb was painted upon the houses of those who dared to believe. The blood that marked those who would not die. The blood that deflected the wrath of God, that caused the death angel to pass over. The blood that kept the destroyer at bay. The blood that preserved the firstborn of Israel while the firstborn of Egypt perished. The blood that served as a gateway out of Egypt, out of bondage, into a covenant relationship with Yahweh. That's what the Passover meal is all about. Do you remember? And guys, every Jew in and out of Palestine, and by this point, there are many Jews out of Palestine in the first century, every Jew, then and now, is required to set this holy night aside to remember Yahweh their God, who brought them up out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And each Jew, commanded by the Mishnah, which is the Jewish secondary text, is required to, quote, regard himself as if he came forth himself out of Egypt. That's Pesachim 10:5. We would do well as the people of God this week to regard each of ourselves as someone standing in the crowd on Palm Sunday and someone standing in the crowd at the crucifixion. Every Jew was required to set the night aside, and Passover was that night in which the God who had rescued a nation of slaves was honored. A forgotten people, a gaggle of poor, dirty, illiterate Semites whose only value, was the amount of labor that their bodies could produce before someone laid it in the ground. A people who were, quote, not a people, who had not received mercy, but because of the love and the strength and the will of God, became a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession. Do those words sound familiar? Well, they should, because it's actually 1 Peter who speaks those words, because he is announcing to us that the old covenant people and the new covenant people, we're the same people. The essence of the Passover celebration was to remember and to give thanks for that moment in history in which a strong enemy was defeated and tens of thousands of souls were called out of darkness into his marvelous light. This is the Passover, and this is the night in which Jesus will institute the communion meal, ratify the new covenant, and introduce the events that will take place on the crucifixion night and the resurrection morning. So what most of us Gentiles don't realize is that the Passover Eve actually had a liturgy. And that's why it's called a Seder. In Hebrew, Seder actually means liturgy, and a liturgy that had developed over many centuries. Now, for those of you who have actually participated in a Seder, you've probably participated in a modern one. Let me rehearse to you what a first century Seder looked like. In other words, what our heroes are doing around that table. So by the time of Jesus' day, the order is best described as a 4-part ceremony. And each part of the ceremony, these 4 parts, is marked by a cup of wine. Now, this is my kind of holiday. Okay, so the first part is called the Kiddush. This is a PL imperative for all the seminarians out there, and it means make it holy. So the night is sanctified. This is the moment when the shades are pulled and the door is closed, and the patriarch stands up with the first cup of wine, and he blesses the evening. And each family joins in the blessing by rehearsing Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. And the first glass of wine is drunk. So now it is sacred space. Then we move into the appetizers. Now, these are not great appetizers, I just have to say, but they are symbolic. Bitter herbs are going to be dipped in salt water to commemorate the tears of the oppression under Egypt. An apple, walnut, cinnamon kind of dip is used to commemorate the mortar in the bricks. And the second glass of wine is drunk. Okay, so by now, these people are having a pretty good time. Just saying. Okay, so we get to the third part of the meal, and this is the big part of the meal. This is when all of the ritual foods are actually consumed. Now, you and I, we think about Thanksgiving. We've got turkey, cranberry sauce, crescent rolls. If there are no crescent rolls at my Thanksgiving dinner table, my children don't come. That's kind of the way it goes. So they've got lamb, they've got matzah bread, they've got borscht, fluffy egg drop soup. All this sort of stuff is on the table. They eat the meal together. And during the meal, they recite the Haggadah. And in Hebrew, that just means the telling. That's all it means. And the way it works is the youngest one at the table gets to ask 4 questions. And in response to each one of the questions, the patriarch, Papa, he gets to recite the story. And what Papa doesn't like to recite stories? Come on, we've all got one of these in our lives. All right, so the youngest at the table, why is only unleavened bread eaten this night? And the patriarch responds, narrating the story, which is being reported in response. Why the bitter herbs? Why only roasted meat eaten on this night? Why are there 2 dippings, the vegetables in salt water and the bitter herbs in the horesheth? And so it's in this fashion that the patriarch of the clan has the opportunity to instruct his entire family in the story of God's redemption. How cool is this, right? The Passover meal is then shared together. Everybody eats and eats till they can't eat anymore, you know? And although they didn't have football at that point in time, I am pretty sure that they all kind of laid out like beach whales on the floor of the living room, right? And did something. And after they eat, the third cup is poured. And in a prayer of grace, following the meal, focusing on Thanksgiving and redemption, that patriarch lifts the third cup and initiates the drinking of the wine. All right, the fourth stage is when the great Hallel is sung. You can hear hallelujah in that, can't you? It means the Psalms of praise. These are Psalms 115 through 118. And the fourth cup is drunk, and the ceremony is concluded. Okay, that's how a Passover works. And guess what? What is happening on Maundy Thursday and what is happening in your communion liturgy is a Passover meal. Matthew chapter 26, verses 26 through 28. And while they were eating, they're eating. So they're at the third cup, they're at the Haggadah. While they were eating, Jesus took some bread. Now there would have been matzah all over the table, just like there are crescent rolls all over my table. And after a blessing, he broke it and he gave it to the disciples. Okay, nothing too weird yet. And he said to his disciples, take, eat. This is my body. Okay. And when he had taken a cup, which cup is this? Oh, it's the third cup of redemption. And he lifts it and he gives thanks. And instead of drinking it, he passes it around his disciples and says, drink from it, all of you, because this is the blood of my covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Okay, first you got to think about the disciples. Okay, they've had a long day, right? If you've been to Jerusalem, you know that the entire city is uphill. I don't know how that works, but it's true. Okay, they've been up since dawn, moving all around the city. It takes a lot of energy to heal the blind, get the lame back up and walking, argue with a Pharisee, chase around, the rock star of the day. They're a little tired. They've washed up. They've reclined at the table. They're on their third glass of wine, and their stomachs are bulging with freshly roasted lamb. And if you have any Greeks in your world, I am married to a Greek man. Oh, is that stuff good? Okay, thank you. So they're a little sleepy. They're not really paying attention, kind of like you during communion, okay? Because they've heard the words so many times. They're not really paying attention until he gets to this part, following the main part of the Passover meal and the rehearsal of the Haggadah. And he starts messing with the liturgy. That's what he's doing. And so I can see James throwing his elbow into John and saying, dude, Jesus has got the words wrong. I thought, God, he's a rabbi. He's got the words wrong. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Okay, guys. Yes, he's messing with the liturgy. And yes, he's surprising his disciples. But he's also doing something else. And that is that your Jesus, on Passover Eve, in the midst of Holy Week, is quoting Moses. And guys, there is not one person in that room that would have missed that quotation. And we need to not miss it either. He is stating out loud, this is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Where does that quote come from? Well, it comes from Exodus chapter 24. Moses has just received the tablets of the covenant. The people at the foot of the mountain have been waiting on pins and needles, trying to figure out what in the world are Moses and Yahweh doing up there. They've been up there an awful long time. Moses comes down off the mountain. His face is glowing with the malamu, the glory of God. He's got 2 tablets written by the finger of God in his arms. And as he comes down off the mountain and the people are in awe, we read that Moses recounted to the people all the words of the Lord and all the ordinances. And all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that Yahweh has spoken we will do. And Moses writes down the word of the Lord, and he arises early in the morning, and he builds an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes. And then he begins to sacrifice the bulls, the sheep, the goats. And in verse 6, Moses took half of the blood and he put it in basins, and the other half he sprinkled on the altar. Ritual moment. We're about to, in the ancient world, sign a contract. That's what we're about to do. And this covenant is the contract between Yahweh and the brand new nation of Israel. Then he took the book of the covenant and he read it in the hearing of the people. And Moses said, the people said, all that Yahweh has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient. And Moses, looking at them, knowing that they won't keep that promise, took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, this is the blood of the covenant, which Yahweh has made with you in accordance with these words. Folks, what is happening at the foot of Mount Sinai is the covenant between Yahweh and Israel is being ratified. It's being sealed. If these people will keep the stipulations, they will gain all of the blessings of the covenant, not the least of which meanings they will have an eternal relationship with the creator of the cosmos. This ratification ceremony is going to involve sacrifice and the blood will be sprinkled on the people. And when it is over, it will be celebrated by a fellowship meal where all of those animals who were sacrificed will be roasted, and everybody will have themselves one great big barbecue. At the foot of Mount Sinai, what does Moses say at the birth of the nation of Israel? He says, this is the blood of the covenant which Yahweh has made with you in accordance with these words. What does Jesus say at the Passover meal on Maundy Thursday, in the midst of Holy Week, at the institution of the communion meal and the birth of the church? He says, this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Do you hear it? I think you hear it. Jesus has chosen this quote because what he is doing is he's reinterpreting the Passover. Jesus is naming the Passover of the Israelites as the communion of the Christian. He is using the sacred celebration of Yahweh's deliverance of the tribes of Israel from bondage, and he is reassociating it with his own pending deliverance of his people from bondage into the salvation of the creator of the cosmos. He is saying that something on the level of the Exodus is about to happen here. And actually, it's going to be bigger. And he is identifying himself as the sacrificial victim who will ratify the new covenant and a new people of God. Just as Moses sealed the Israelites to Yahweh at the foot of Sinai, Jesus is sealing his people to himself on the eve of the crucifixion. This is the moment that the church is born. And he does it with the third cup of the cup of redemption, which he doesn't drink himself, but he passes it around to the people. Folks, do you see it? Do you hear it? And this time, the oaths that are being sworn are not being sworn in the blood of bulls and goats. This time, the oaths are being sworn in the blood of God the Son. And this time, the exiles that are being retrieved from the far reaches of the four corners of the earth are not simply the exiles of Babylon or the refugees of Egypt. This time, the exiles that are being called home are the exiles of Eden. And every son of Adam and every daughter of Eve is being invited to this table to recognize and ratify the new covenant of the new hope of the church that is us. Okay, we need at least one amen. Okay. So in our liturgy, when we pass a cup, as you will on Maundy Thursday, we are passing around the cup of redemption to remind ourselves that the price has been paid. Greater than the story of the Exodus is the story of the Christ. Once we were not a people, but now by the mercy and the grace and the strength of God, we become a grace. Once we were a mixed multitude, but now we are a single tribe, a single people, and we belong to the firstborn of the dead. In our liturgy, when we pass this cup, we don't do it casually, because when we do it, we are announcing to ourselves and to the world that we're in. That this is our faith. This is not the faith of our parents or our grandparents or our pastors who we hired to be holy for us. This is our covenant. This is our Passover. This is our oath. Okay, we didn't get to the fourth cup now, did we? All right, the fourth cup we will find in verses 29 through 30. Jesus says, "But I say to you, with this fourth cup, I will not drink of the fruit of this vine from now on until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Now this is odd. He should be drinking the cup, and he isn't. But after singing a hymn, the great Hallel, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And the disciples are thinking, okay, he'll explain all that later. Well, essentially what Jesus is doing is he's taking the fourth cup, right? And he's putting it in the middle of the table. And he's saying, I'm going to drink this later. I'm going to drink this later when we're all together again. He's messing with the liturgy again, but how is he messing with it? Well, among the Jews, that fourth cup is called the cup of consummation, and it celebrates the great promises coming out of the Old Testament that recite over and over again that I will be your God and you will be my people, and I will dwell among you forever. That passage can be found all over your Old Testament. What is Jesus doing? With his unfinished meal, this last cup becomes a promise. You see, because when Jesus puts that in the middle of the table, he says, we will be together again. I'm going to drink it when we are. Because you see, Jesus, on that night of the Passover meal, on that Maundy Thursday, he knows what's about to happen. He knows that he and his disciples are going to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, which they've done 1,000 times. And he knows his men are tired and they're sleepy, and they are completely convinced that this is the week when he is going to become the reigning king of Israel. They're completely convinced that the Roman Empire is going to be thrown off, and this is the moment when Jesus at last is recognized as the son of David, the crowned king of a liberated Israel. What they don't know is that the soldiers are already on their way. What they don't know is that there are torches and swords and betrayal and blood money that's already been paid. They don't know that it's all going to come crashing down around them in the next few hours. He knows that his men are going to face the screaming and the torches and the swords, and they are not going to stand their ground. They are not going to keep their promises. They're going to scatter. They're going to run. And he knows that the world is about to deliver a blow to his 12 most beloved friends, that their faith may not survive. So he is offering them a promise. And he's offering them a promise that they do not yet know they need. Have you ever been there? Where Jesus has offered you a promise that you don't yet know you need. Well, let me tell you, the Holy Week is a promise. And it's a promise that he knows you need. Because the world is about to come crashing down around us. The world crashes down around us, unfortunately, on a regular basis. And we need something to hold on to. And something that we have is that they will be together again. And this time, there will be no tears, no soldiers, no panic, no death. They will be his people, and God himself will be among them. We need to realize that in that Passover meal, that cup of wine that he passed around, Jesus is swearing to these men and to us that I am forging a bond with you, that I will give my life to make eternal. I am swearing an oath to you, and I am swearing it in my own blood. So as we step into this week, and as you approach Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, when you are going to approach the communion table again, I want you to know that you are approaching in remembrance. Do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember the amazing rescue story of which we are a part? And I want you to realize that just like on Mount Sinai, our participation in these rituals of this Holy Week is a declaration for all the world to hear that all that Yahweh has commanded, we will do. I'm in. I am in. This is not my parents. This is not my grandparents. This is not my pastors. This is me. And I am in. And the last thing that we do in this celebration, especially on Sunday morning, is we celebrate in hope. The fourth cup. We celebrate in hope that in all of the agonies of our broken world, we know that one day we will gather again around the family table, and he will lift that cup for us one more time. When we are safe, we are home, and we are at our family table forever. Now, I need to tell you a little story before I close you down. I've already made your lunch late, so here we go. Back when my girls were little, in Wilmore, Kentucky, come on. You are looking at a picture of them being incredibly adorable. They aren't, oh, come on, oh, okay. Actually, I was looking at Lowe's little ones over here in the corner, and I was going, oh, okay. These are mine, baby teeth and all, yeah. And at this stage of our lives, we had a pet, a family pet. Her name was Pichula, which in modern Greek means little one, because she was the runt of the litter. And she had figured out very early on that as the runt of the litter, she needed to be incredibly adorable if she was going to get what she wanted. So she was incredibly adorable, and as a result, she was kind of pudgy as well, because she got whatever she wanted. We loved our Pichula. She was so cuddly. She was so sweet. Yes, she was. But one day, something went wrong. And the vets think maybe she got into some antifreeze, maybe she got a mouse or a rat that had been poisoned. And her kidneys started shutting down, and there was nothing we could do, and it was horrible. And you've been there. You make the call, and you go to the vet, and you come home with a cardboard box of a critter that you love with your life. Well, I was the only one at the vet because everyone in my family are cowards. And as I got home, my husband, who would have sworn to you that he hated that cat, tears, red eyes, and he'd already dug the grave, and my girls were gathered, and it was time to bury Pichula. And because they were small, this was a teachable moment, okay? And so my sweet little Elise, the little one, she came walking up to the box in all of her cute toddlerhood, and she said, Pichula, come out of the box. Pichula, come out of the box. Because that sweet little one didn't understand death yet. The bigger one, she understood, and she was crushed. She was inconsolable. She was hysterical. And so we took our sweet Pichula and we put her in her little grave, and we covered her up and we prayed. And I recited to my children, okay, Elise, Noel, this is how it works. Pichula has died, and this is terribly sad. But Pichula is going to go be with Jesus. And he's going to take care of her until he comes back. And when he comes back, he will bring Pichula with him, and we will all be together again. Now, The theological depth of that conversation we can talk about later. But my point was this was my children's first experience with death, and I wanted them to understand. Yes, Grandma, Grandpa, they've died. They've gone to be with Jesus, but Jesus is going to take care of them. And when he comes back, he'll bring them with him, and we'll all be together again. Okay, I must have recited that story 12 times over the course of the day. But now it's nighttime, and now it's time to put my sweet girls to bed. And the little one falls asleep, no problem. The big one, she's troubled. You've been there, mamas. Yes, you have. And so I'm laying in her bed with her, and she's trying to fall asleep, and the noisemaker's on, and the night light is on, and I can tell that my sweet child is brokenhearted. And she says to me, Mama, tell me again. Tell me again. And I say to her, sweet girl, Pichula has died. She's gone to be with Jesus. But Jesus is going to take care of her, and when he comes back, he'll bring her with him, and we'll all be together again. And my girl said to me, she said, but Mama, what if Jesus loses Pichula? Or what if he forgets? Now, she's 5 years old. You can hear why she's asking those questions. But my heart broke. And my heart broke because I heard in the words of my sweet girl the deepest concerns of the human heart. What if he forgets? Or what if he loses me? And so I reassured my child that evening with the same words that I want to reassure you with today as we step into our high holidays. Jesus never loses anyone. And Jesus never forgets. Amen.